6-year teaching. I taught 5 years, 7th grade, and this is my first year teaching 6th grade. But I've always been in middle school. I like the middle school. 7th grade is really where I think I'm just most comfortable with that since I did it for 5 years. This group, there's a lot of like, he stole my pencil, she did, she hit me, and I'm really getting used. I have to get used to. The patience level is, you have to have a lot more patience with that kind of stuff, and I definitely could not go lower than 6th grade. Generally, if we're in the midst of the story, they have a question of the day. They make folders at the beginning of every unit where they keep their questions of the day. I found folders are easier than notebooks because if I take them home, they're lighter and it's easier that way. But and then they'll do that. We'll discuss it. I don't make people share, because the question of the days generally are more personal. So if they want to share, then they share. Or if I know that they're not paying attention, I'll call on them just to throw them off a little bit. But and then we'll get into reading that day or whatever the lesson is for that day. And then I usually come back together at the end and like wrap it up, just a brief, like, because with 42 minutes it's really hard to have like a huge opening and a huge closing, because if you spend 20 minutes on your closing, that's like half your class. So sometimes it's frustrating, like if I do have to write a student up and pass it along to administration, in my head I have an idea of what the consequence should be, and it's not always going to be that, just because I have no control over what they decide to do with it. So I guess that would be my biggest. And also with this reading series, I would like a little bit more flexibility in what I could read, because there's so many stories and so much to get in that it leaves very little time to do the novels and all that on top of it. Maybe if we had 90-minute blocks and things like that, that might help a little bit. Are new to me because I was always, in 7th grade, there's like 42 minutes, how am I going to do stations, like 50,000 things going on. But it's really worked, especially the maturity difference between 6th and 7th grade has been so dramatic for me. Like, they were very, they can't work independently very well. So this gives them an opportunity to run their mouth, but it gives them some structure to do so. So the stations have been the most effective strategy. Inclusion can be a wonderful thing, but for some students, it's not beneficial. And there are a couple students that, are so below that this may not be the environment for them. But that's just a bunch of paperwork, unfortunately.
Do you have an inclusion class? Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that?
I have a special education teacher come in to that class, so that helps to have 2 people. And, I usually, group hire with lower to help each other out, but then at the same time, you don't want the higher one to have to be doing all the teaching all the time. So then she'll take her small group and work with them individually. Middle school is especially their first year. You have the stay-at-home moms that were used to being in the homeroom moms in the classrooms in elementary school. That you don't really have that. That's so much in middle school. So some of the parents on their end find that kind of difficult, that they're not always with their kid and always able to be in there watching what's going on. But as far as communication, I do a lot of email. I call when necessary. I have a website set up where they can check for homework, assignments, and all my grades are on the eSchool system, so they can always see what's in my grade book.
Do you find it more effective for the child's education if the parents are a little bit more involved?
Absolutely. I mean, I can do all I can do, and if it's not being held up on that end,
then
At
there's
home.
really
You can't
You know, I can
make
only
them
do so
care.
much.
I mean, I just, like, I send him progress reports and they have to bring them back signed, you know. Most parents are gonna do that because it doesn't take much effort on their part, but to ask them to get on the computer and check the Home Access Center and check my website for.
Yeah, my mom was all over me about it. She was always involved with me,
Mhm.
you know, all the way
It's
up.
hard to relate when, because
So
my
it's
parents were
different.
very much like that. So I'm like, well, why don't you have, like, you know, my mom, if I said at a project, we would be at Happy Harry's that night and getting everything, you know, even if it was due 5 months from now. But yeah, so that's hard to get used to. But you can only do what you can do. I mean, like, I call, you know, sometimes phones are turned off. Like, I didn't grow up in that atmosphere. So it's just, you know, understanding different worlds. You have to just, you know, and reach them where you can reach them. I mean, I think it's beneficial. I think that they learn to work with people outside of their comfort zone, a lot of them. You know, some are used to one way of doing things and one group of people, especially if they're coming from like Catholic elementary schools or private elementary schools. So in that aspect, I think it works out well. I feel like some of the creativity has been taken away from the teaching profession, unfortunately. I think there needs to obviously be guidelines for each grade level so all the kids can transfer among schools and, you know, and be in generally the same area. But especially in language arts, like when I was teaching 7th grade, I did a lot of novels, and if I wasn't into a novel, like, it's hard to teach. I mean, it's hard to be passionate about something that you're like, oh my God, I can't get through this myself. How am I gonna? And there was one book, and after the first year, I said, I can't do it, because they knew it was painful to me. I had no buy-in to it, so why were they? So, I mean, especially in that aspect, like, you have to have some flexibility, because you have to know the kids, and with the differentiated instruction, they want you to, like, teach things that they're interested in. Well, if you're told this is the material you have to use, that makes it really difficult. So I love the kids, and, you know, hearing their stories and their different personalities. I love getting to know them. You know, some of them are great in the hallway, but when I ask them to read a book, they're not my best friend anymore, you know. But, you know, I do. It's a job, you have to like the kids.